And I took the first tablet, woke up the next morning, immediately feeling like there was something very much not right with my body. I had the emotional blunting like immediately. I couldn't really name that at the time. It was like being wrapped in cellophane bubble wrap or something, like nothing could get through to me. And I also had instant suicidal ideation. I'd never thought about like killing myself at that point, but I still remember that till this day. I went on a walk the next morning and all I could think about was dying.
Yeah.
The sexual dysfunction also started immediately, like the full spectrum, the non-private parts, anorgasmia, no libido. And then over a couple of days, it actually worsened, and the numbness became so bad I could actually feel it, like crossing my legs or wearing tight pants. It was like getting a lidocaine shot at the dentist.
Hey, what is going on, guys? This is Mark Millick here with the Moral Medicine YouTube channel. So today we are going to be interviewing Cornelia. Cornelia is a PSSD patient that's had PSSD for going on 5 years now. So she has the bravery to step up and share her story, and we really appreciate her coming on the channel. So Cornelia, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So Cornelia, we'll kind of jump into your story here. Do you mind giving the audience a quick rundown of what your life was like before you got PSSD?
So I've been having some mental health issues since probably my teen years, OCD mainly. I was a germaphobe, the classic washing your hands a lot type of thing.
Sure.
Some social anxiety. I struggled in school a little bit. So I've been in and out of therapy for years. And unfortunately, it wasn't very helpful for me. And there was always a lot of pressure to take medication.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost a script. I don't know if you've ever been to therapy yourself, but it's like you go in, there's a couple of sessions, you tell your story, there's some building a relationship with the therapist, and then they refer you to a psychiatrist that they work with and refer all their clients to. But I was very adamant about not taking anything for a long time. Not necessarily because I was actually that well informed about the risks of psychiatric medication, but just from a common sense perspective, you know, your brain is, I guess, the seat of your consciousness.
Right.
It's what makes you you. So the idea of altering that with a drug just seemed like a terrible idea, you know?
Yeah, no, I completely get that. And I've had doctors try to prescribe me SSRIs in the past. It's a very easy process. And a lot of the times, it's like the first thing they go to when they can't figure out what's happening to them. So they give you an SSRI thinking this must be depression related or anxiety related. So, no, I completely understand that. So, who was it? A doctor that ended up prescribing you the medication then?
Yeah.
Okay.
So up until that point, I was working at the gym. I was working out a lot myself, and I was kind of, I guess, obsessed with going to concerts, traveling to see bands and stuff like that. So living a pretty normal life, just with some mental health issues here and there.
Right.
But then during the COVID time, about fall 2019, my anxiety really spiraled just from the isolation, you know, from the lockdowns. I wasn't working. The constant fear-mongering on TV, not great when you're a germaphobe,
right,
as you can imagine. So I started having panic attacks and insomnia, which led me to go back to therapy. And then I had a pretty bad experience with that particular therapist who put a lot of pressure on me to go on medication. And I caved, you know. I think the sleeping issue had a lot to do with it because, yeah, if you've ever had really bad insomnia, it really wears you down. So I agreed to do it.
Well, honestly, Cornelia, I know a lot of people sort of dealing with mental health issues during the COVID-19 lockdowns, obviously. So
Yeah.
hopefully you've learned to forgive yourself for making the decision to take the medication because there was a lot of pressure at that time to take
Yeah, very
SSRIs.
difficult time for many people, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, if you don't mind me asking, what SSRI did they prescribe you?
Um, so I didn't have a psychiatrist at the time.
Okay.
So I went to this walk-in clinic that's a part of the local psychiatric hospital.
Mhm.
And I walked in and out within 10 minutes, and they gave me a prescription for mirtazapine, which isn't a classic SSRI, but an
Okay.
atypical antidepressant,
Mhm.
but also a serotonergic drug.
Okay. I gotcha.
Yeah.
Did you start taking it that day? And when you did you start experiencing symptoms? Kind of walk us through that process there.
I did start taking it that day, and it was an immediate horror show. Like, it's taken at night because it's also given for sleep. It's sedating. And I took the first tablet, woke up the next morning, immediately feeling like there was something very much not right with my body.
Mm.
I had the emotional blunting, like, immediately. I couldn't really name that at the time. It was like being wrapped in cellophane bubble wrap or something, like nothing could get through to me. And I also had instant suicide ideation. I'd never thought about like killing myself at that point, but I still remember that till this day. I went on a walk the next morning and all I could think about was dying.
Yeah. Yeah.
The sexual dysfunction also started immediately,
Mhm.
like the full spectrum, the non-private parts, anorgasmia, no libido.
Mhm.
And then over a couple of days, it actually worsened, and the numbness became so bad I could actually feel it, like crossing my legs or wearing tight pants.
Mhm.
It was like getting a lidocaine shot at the dentist.
Okay.
So
Yeah. 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 Were you warned about any of this before you started taking the medication? Did doctors give you any type of
no,
informed consent?
not at all. There was no talk about risks or side effects.
Yeah.
I went to that clinic on weekend, and the doctor, I think, was kind of annoyed because he had to work on the weekend.
Yeah. Sure.
Um, so they couldn't wait to get me out of there as quickly as possible.
Mhm.
Didn't even really listen to me. The only thing I got was a lecture because we have this electronic patient file system in Austria called ELGA, ELGA.
Okay.
So any doctor you go to, they have access to your full medical history.
Mhm.
And he was like, "Oh, you were diagnosed with OCD 15 years ago, and you're not medicated. How dare you?"
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's all I got. Um,
Unbelievable.
and I did read the pamphlet actually,
Mhm.
but because mirtazapine is an SSRI, it doesn't even list sexual dysfunction on the leaflet. Um, and as far as I know, that still hasn't been updated, even though the EMA has since added, I think, I don't know, PSSD or just
Yeah.
some vague phrasing about persistent sexual dysfunction to the leaflet,
Right.
but that drug definitely didn't have it.
Unbelievable. Even to this day, it still doesn't have it. Is that right?
No, it doesn't.
Wow. So, how long did you take the drug for before you came off? Because you went to the doctor. Was that about a week or two after you started the medication?
I stopped after 3 weeks because the symptoms were so bad. I also had some other bizarre symptoms, like a really weird startle response,
Mhm.
almost like brain zaps that people describe coming off of medication, but I had it while I was on it.
Mhm.
Someone would come in the room, and even though I could see them coming in through the corner of my eye, I
Mhm.
would get startled, and it was like an electric shock.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all of that was pretty disturbing, and I decided to stop
Yeah.
cold turkey. I figured I didn't need to taper after just 3 weeks.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, after you stopped, what happened? Did the symptoms get worse? Did they get better? Did they stabilize?
Not a lot. Like, I had some flu-like symptoms, like Prozac flu, I guess, for a few days,
Mhm.
but the sexual dysfunction just remained the same. The emotional planting actually got worse.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think when people hear sexual dysfunction, they just think it's lower libido or something, but it's literally like that part of my brain was surgically removed. Like I can't even comprehend feeling anything sexually. And that
It
just
robbed you.
remained like from the
Absolutely.
first pill.
Unbelievable. I can relate to you on that because you're right. It robs everything from you from a sexual standpoint. I mean, I don't know if you feel this,
Yeah.
but I don't feel anything whatsoever. I mean, it's like becoming an asexual
Yeah.
in some
Yeah,
sense. There's
like
no libido.
attraction,
Right.
nothing.
Yeah. And you can look at somebody who you find attractive and say they're attractive without feeling
Yeah,
attracted, to them.
exactly.
That's so weird, isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cornelia, I appreciate you sharing that and opening up about that. I know that's not easy. So at this point, it's been 5 years for you since you took the medication. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So
Almost 5 years, yeah.
do you mind giving me a rundown on kind of how this has impacted your life in that time?
Honestly, I feel like my life ended in 2020. I have not been able to work since because, it's interacting with people is pretty difficult for me at times because you're faking it,
Yeah.
every social interaction, every smile, it's pretending ultimately.
Mhm.
Also, the insomnia worsened from the PSSD. When my anhedonia is really bad, I don't get sleepy at all, and going to sleep is just not happening.
Mhm.
And it's not like you can call into work and be like, "Oh, I can't come in today. I'm up 24 hours or 72 hours or however long."
Right.
So, and I've also been isolating a lot because just for one thing, hanging out with people just gives me nothing.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it's just a painful reminder that other people still have their sexuality, they have their humanity, and I don't have that. And I'm also, I just turned 35, and everyone around me is settling down, having families, and it's brutal to just be excluded from that completely.
Yeah. Yeah, Cornelia, I can't say this enough. I'm so sorry you're going through all this. And, I'm in my 30s as well. And I understand all that because you feel like your life
Yeah,
is essentially put on hold. I mean, you said it perfectly. Your life essentially ended 5 years ago when you took that medication. And
it did.
right. And when I took the medication that caused me damage, my life essentially ended, at that time. That's what it feels like. So have you talked to your family about this? And if you have, do they believe you?
Yeah, my dad believes me and is trying to be supportive. My mom I lost 2 years ago, unfortunately.
I'm sorry.
Um, thank you. But the problem is, I also have a house sibling who's on an SSRI, and he's one of those people who would probably tell you that it saved his life.
Hmm.
So I feel like that always casts a shadow of doubt on my story.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, my family knows, my friends, or what I have left in terms of the social cycle, they don't know. I'm just
Mhm.
not ready to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And I've been isolating a lot anyway, so
Yeah.
there's no need to tell them.
Yeah, honestly, Cornelia, I really appreciate your bravery and stepping up and doing this video. I know it's not easy, obviously, but it's really important that people like yourself tell your story because you have a right to be heard. Your voice needs to be heard, and your story needs to be told.
Yeah,
Um,
I think so too.
yeah, absolutely. And I understand too. I think you said it was your sibling is taking an SSRI. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
my house sibling.
Right. And I know people who took the same medication that I took who take it without issue, and they have a tough time
Yeah,
believing that I'm going through something what I'm going through at this point. And so I get it, and it's tough to have that conversation because you feel like it is stigmatized and no one's going to believe you. But there are a lot of people that do believe you. Obviously, our communities
yeah.
believe you. The PFS and the PSSD community does. So you are not alone in any of this. Um,
Yeah, I also think it's very difficult because people on SSRIs, I don't want to generalize, but I
sure.
think many just almost playing the victim card as if us telling our stories is like victimizing them when we are the ones that were quite literally physically harmed and they're doing great. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
what stigma is there in taking psychiatric medication when so many people are on it and there's
Right.
one and the stigma campaign after the other? So I
Yeah.
don't think, I think we're the ones that are stigmatized.
Yeah, and you're right. It's a very unfortunate position to be in because a lot of people can't take it without issue, and so we are kind of
Yeah,
I guess we'll call it the silent minority in some sense. But I think this is actually affecting a lot more people than we realize. The issue is that
I think so
these
too.
side effects aren't listed on the leaflet for the medication, so nobody's looking for these types of things necessarily.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think these sufferers are a lot more prevalent than we even give credit for.
for sure.
So, just real quick, what are your current symptoms? Just to run through them again. You have the sexual dysfunction. You said you can't work because of the insomnia. Do you have any type of
Yeah.
cognitive dysfunction or anything? Any neurological issues?
Um, yeah, I still have complete anhedonia, emotional blunting. Actually, it's still gotten worse. I
Uh-huh.
can't really listen to music anymore. It's just background noise now.
Mhm.
I have a hard time watching a show because without the ability to empathize with the characters,
Right,
it doesn't hold my attention, you know?
right, right.
And I
Absolutely.
feel like a couple months ago that I would have maybe like a 30% interest in it, and now I have like zero. So it's
Okay.
actually getting worse. And I still go to the gym, but it's
Yeah.
going through the motions. I get no endorphins from it.
Right.
I
Yeah.
have numbness actually all over my body. My whole skin is numb.
Hmm.
I don't have much pain sensation. I keep hurting myself at the gym or coming home with bruises, and I don't even notice.
Yeah. Yeah. I can
And
relate to all that.
I think one of the biggest parts of that's really one of the hardest things to deal with is that I look at my family and my friends, and I just cognitively I remember how much I care about them, but in my heart I feel nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's just brutal. And yeah, you asked about cognitive symptoms. I did have some short-term memory issues and like
Right.
brain fog, especially in the beginning. I think that's the one thing that's actually gotten better over
Okay.
time.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. I think that tend to improve for a lot of people who have the cognitive dysfunction that improves over time.
Yeah.
But everything else is kind of remaining at this point. Have you gone to any additional doctors about this or any specialists to have them try to assess or evaluate you? I mean, what's your
Yeah.
experience with the medical system?
So at the time, I didn't have a psychiatrist because I was just at a walk-in clinic. But I told my therapist when it first happened, and he referred me to a private psychiatrist
Okay.
who was very nice and very polite and listened to me.
Mhm.
Um, but also told me that what I was experiencing couldn't be possible because I'd been off medication for maybe 2 or 3 months at a time.
Right.
But she still prescribed me Wellbutrin, I guess their go-to to counter sexual side effects.
Hmm.
But that also just gave me more side effects,
Yeah.
made me grind my teeth and clench my jaw to the point where I could barely chew solid foods.
Yeah.
So I stopped taking that as well, and it didn't help with the anhedonia or the sexual dysfunction.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, I've not had all the tests like some people do. I haven't had a biopsy
Hmm.
because honestly, it's been very traumatic for me, the whole thing.
Of course.
And I want nothing to do with medical professionals anymore. I don't even want to be in a doctor's waiting room anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I kind of don't see the point because even if you get a diagnosis, there's no treatment.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I did have lab work done, a
Hmm.
hormonal panel, but nothing came of it.
Yeah.
I went to like 2 gynecologists. One of them was willing to kind of acknowledge that it's possible for this to happen,
Hmm.
but she wasn't willing to diagnose me particularly because I was only on it for 3 weeks.
Really.
Yeah.
Your experience is very common with doctors, like we all have, where we're kind of gaslit or told, "Hey, this is
Yeah.
happen from the medication," and a lot of doctors even try to prescribe an additional SSRI. I don't think Wellbutrin counts as an SSRI, but it falls in. I think it's an SNRI is what they call it, so it's a similar category. And a lot of the times,
Yeah.
when people try to, start a different medication, it makes their current symptoms worse and may even exacerbate. Well, it exacerbates their current symptoms, and they may develop even new symptoms in that case. And I understand how tough it is too, because clearly you're in shape, you work out, you're into fitness, but even then, that doesn't help you all that much. Is that correct?
No.
Yeah.
No, I train 6 days a week. I eat clean. does nothing at all. I've also tried like many other things, supplements, peptides, testosterone, all of the things. I've done some pretty risky stuff, but nothing helps at all.
Nothing helps. And I have the same experience. I at one point went gluten free for months. I still work out 4 or 5 days a week. I do cardio. I do eat relatively healthy, whole, clean foods. I'm probably gluten free 80% of the time at this point, but nothing works. There are no improvements. And I think there's something to be said about trying to address, the gut health, but that can only really go so far. And so there's obviously something deeper going on within our bodies that we just haven't yet determined, what it is. So, Cornelia, my heart goes out to you. It really does. I'm so sorry you're going through this. Before we hop off, do you have any closing statements you want to make or anything else you'd like to tell the audience?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to live with. I feel violated, sexually violated, mutilated, really.
Yeah.
And I think it's almost adding insult to injury, just how little interest there is, how little research interest, how people don't care about what happens to us. You'd think that with something like this, there'd be public outrage, that this is being done to young people, but really it's not. And I think that makes it so much harder to just deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, very well said, but you're obviously not alone in any of this. And I just think this is so much more prevalent than we even know about at this point. So it's unfortunate because so many young lives have been lost essentially as a result of these medications because we don't receive any warning about what could potentially happen to us. So
when you think about how many are put on those medications as children, and they might not even know what happened to them because they have no point of reference. They didn't have a sexuality before they even took the medication.
Yeah.
So, I also think there's probably a lot more sufferers than we realize.
I completely agree. And it's amazing. You mentioned children. They're prescribing children, as far as I understand, SSRI, like 9 or 10, and, for depression and anxiety. And you're right. Who knows how that's screwing up their sexual functioning or their sexual development over the next 5 to 6 years. So they have nothing to compare it to. They don't know that something's wrong, even though something very well may be wrong. It's horrible. So
I think they approved Lexapro for like 6-year-olds this year.
Are you serious?
I think that's criminal.
Really. That is criminal. I didn't hear about that.
Shouldn't be happening.
Yeah.
Like how can a 6-year-old even be depressed? That's not.
Yeah.
That's just childhood problems, like family problems. It's not depression.
Yeah. How do you diagnose a 6-year-old with depression? I can't even begin to comprehend that. So, it's unbelievable. But this issue really is growing. So I do think at some point in the not so distant future, there is going to be some type of help for us. We're going to find hopefully a biomarker, and then we're going to develop some type of targeted therapeutics. That's why I think it's so important, though, that people share their story and they donate and they go public and they donate to the PSSD network. So we just have to keep fighting as a community. So. Well, Cornelia, I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much. And we'll see everyone next time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.